Yeah, I should need,
Yeah,
would you review?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just set up the time.
Hi, Kwame, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Everything's good.
These are twos.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't get that one.
And I have everything.
Okay, great.
I'm not sure what the next step is.
Too busy right now.
Everybody, we're unmuted. We're unmuted, okay. Hi, good evening. It is 6:32, and I am calling this meeting of the Laws and Rules Committee to order. In attendance, I have myself, Alderwoman Hirsch, Alderman Reynolds Scott Childress, Alderman Bob Dennison, Alderwoman Sarah Pasty, Alderwoman Jeannie Edwards is joining us as a guest, Alderman Michael Tierney is joining us as a guest. We have Alderwoman Mickens and President Schott, Corporation Counsel Barbara Graves Poller, and Director of Housing Initiatives Bartek Starbach. First thing on our agenda, number one, items to the disposition policy. Bartek, would you like to join us?
So last year, we worked for about 6 months on a disposition policy for the city of Kingston. Basically, the process by which the city would dispose of surplus property. And surplus property was defined as any property taken via interim or for back, meaning for back taxes. At that time, it was not anticipated that the city would be using a tool called 19A. Which is power given to us by New York State to take title to abandoned properties. It's not commonly used in New York, but it is a tool that is available to us. And we are currently exploring using 19A in the city of Kingston and asking the council to edit this disposition policy that was passed. The only edit would be that 19A be included. 19A properties be included in the disposition policy provisions. And then, I think it would just give the administration, myself included, obviously, some understanding of what would happen to that property once and if that property is acquired. And I would be happy to take any questions.
Is 19A a new deal?
I think it's been around for a few years now. Not recent.
Yeah, I actually looked it up online and apparently Jamestown, because that committee sort of adopted it. And I guess my question would be, what are the conditions under which a building department can determine that a property is considered abandoned?
Yeah, it's very clear and detailed and defined
Oh, good.
in the statute.
Yeah.
It has to meet certain conditions, one of which, for instance, is that it's not secure, right? That it doesn't meet basic building code issues.
Okay,
For example.
Yeah.
So it has, in order to be eligible for 19A, it has to be certified abandoned, which is a process that I would complete with the building department.
okay.
Yes.
And
And
I will note that this is something the council has recently taken up because the council passed amendments to 178, 179. The review process began sort of in the fall of last year. And then there were, I think, 3 or 4 meetings that the council gathered information on how potential proposed changes to 178, 179, how they abandoned properties and a lot of things, how those would be applied. And there was a meeting with the buildings department in December of last year before the council changed it. So there's been a fair amount of recent council activity on this exact issue.
Bob?
Do you have any idea how many properties you're talking about?
I'm there's a vast potential. Currently, I'm focused on 7 properties.
There are certainly a few in Ward 1 that would benefit from this.
Michael?
This is just for residential properties?
Correct, only residential.
On average, how many years in arrears, is a property usually? I know it has to be at least 3 years, but when do you start that?
For 19A, it doesn't necessarily have to be in arrears. It's just certified abandoned. Most abandoned properties happen to be in arrears, but they don't necessarily have to be. Does that make sense?
Is that because the bank is paying taxes or?
Just very specific situations.
Okay.
It's not entirely clear to me.
Yeah.
But for example, for the 7 properties that I'm currently exploring, 6 out of the 7 are severely in arrears. One is
Is one of them my house?
If you wanted to be.
Well, sometimes we don't turn the lights on, I was thinking.
And so how far is the search, you say it's abandoned? Do you ever look to, I don't know, like a sister, a brother, a child, or does
We
it
have to do
extend that?
a full title search. No, we would have to notice everyone. So yeah, it would expand to any potential errors, And ultimately, to be successful, it does require a judge result for us to receive title.
Judge Jessup. So, for some reason, the version of our agenda online is missing pages. So, you basically added acquisition everywhere where foreclosure appears,
Exactly.
except for that very first part.
Yes, so in the kind of a purpose, we say that this applies to in-rem properties and also abandoned dwellings acquired under 19A. And there's no other substantial change other than what we just mentioned, which is adding acquisition.
Are there any other pages? Can you just keep scrolling?
Yep.
Because I didn't notice that the page was missing. Dr. E3, is there anything?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the even number of pages are missing.
Yeah, it's stop right there, please. Can you go down past C, so to D? Just so everybody sees it, you can see the agenda, if there's anything different. But I just want everybody to see it's not here. Is there anything after E?
No,
Well, I move we adopt the changes as suggested by Rick. Second.
Any discussion?
Or can you just read?
Okay. A resolution of the City of Kingston, New York, Common Council editing a policy for disposition of surplus city-owned property to include properties acquired via Article 19A. Discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Congratulations on Fairview, by the way.
I know, I was so excited about that.
I'm impressed, really.
Isn't it amazing?
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barker.
Thanks.
See you on the trail.
I was trying to figure out how I just put all your things on the one committee, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's what I'll write behind. See. Just do it.
Sunny Rockshore.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was it.
I said,
Yes. That was the- Sunny Zip, just the city is.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is the renaming of Van Buren Street Playground, submitted by Alderwoman Edwards. Sorry, I was like reading, sorry. And Mayor Noble had sent in a communication as well, but I don't see him on the meeting, so, if you like to.
yes, I signed the wrong box.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay,
Yeah, this is the renaming of the Van Buren Park, in memory of a young child that was killed. And, it's a closure to my community, to Ward 4. It really is, it's a closure for the family. And it's a remembrance because, it's going to hopefully be named after her, but there's a bigger picture in the long run of, that the community is really starting to rally together, and it's good seeing it. So it's showing, everyone coming together for the same purpose. So,
Can I ask a question? What is the actual name that is being proposed? Because that actually has not been sent in any of the communications.
to be named after DJ.
Well, I know, but is it going to be the Genero Mason Playground, like the actual, like we need the actual name for the resolution and also signage?
Yes,
And that hasn't been said.
right, I wasn't under that understanding, I was under the understanding that, well, it had to do with the name DJ Mason Park, it would have been, but I didn't know I had to do all the, I will make a signage for you.
No, you don't have to make the sign, there will be, we will have a sign made for this, so we need to decide the actual name, is it gonna, it's the Van Buren Street Playground.
Uh-huh.
so the letter from
Does
the
it-
Parks and
Does it
Rec
have it? We're just not
says,
looking at the sign.
to rename the Van Buren Street Playground in the memory of DeGenera Mason, who tragically died on Van Buren Street in December of 2020.
So what we said, we'll,
It still doesn't say.
call it
Doesn't
Genera Mason Memorial Playground.
I like that, I just
Or
need
is
to
it
have
DJ? Well,
something.
she was saying DJ Mason Memorial Playground.
Well, everyone called her DJ, but, you know, what do I, her mother wrote her full name out, so I'm going to go from there.
Okay.
I move that we rename the Van Buren Street Playground to the Genera Mason Memorial Playground.
Do you wanna make sure the mother is okay with that before caucus, if you could do that, because we can amend it to DJ if you would prefer that.
Find out now, she's,
Alright,
I'll second that.
And the A in her first name is lowercase after the apostrophe?
yes,
Okay.
she's screaming right now, I'm sorry to hold you up.
No, it's all right.
It would be
no,
good.
there's
It's good to know.
Make sure we know.
Thank you for asking that, yeah. I didn't. Her whole name,
Her whole name.
Right, the Memorial Playground,
her full name, yeah.
and then Memorial
Memorial
Playground.
Playground.
Okay.
Can you just read off the spelling of her first name? Capital D apostrophe.
Well, here in the communication from Parks, it says capital D, little j, apostrophe, ANERIA,
Oh, the apostrophe is after the.
after the J.
Right, but her whole name is, sorry, I was called her DJ. How do you say it, last name?
Generator?
De Janeiro.
Didn't-
Okay,
Did you
so
say the D or no?
I like apostrophe place.
Spelling's the more important.
Okay, so I'm gonna read this. A resolution of the city of Kingston, New York, renaming of Van Buren Playground to DeGenera Mason Memorial Playground on Van Buren Street, Kingston, New York. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Thank you very much for bringing this forward, Jeannie. And I hope, this is the second playground that we've had to name after a child who we tragically lost, and I hope this is the last.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance to ask the question. Do we still have the sign makers in-house at DPW?
so there's an
They
error.
did a really good
Right
job.
there. That's what's on there.
Charles Johnson.
Okay, because, because this is different here.
Yeah.
This is good. This is the apostrophe
Yeah.
after the D.
It's cool.
So we can have it correct, 100% correct.
Yeah.
So the communication here is incorrect.
Well,
Oh,
there just says DJ.
Well, no,
right.
it
letter
says
from the
DJ
person.
apostrophe with,
but first permits
she's
to be
written it
correct.
as D apostrophe.
The apostrophe.
I will make sure that before it's made that this has
Yeah,
eyes
yeah.
of the mother.
That is, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
No, I'm just saying, even after that,
It's approved.
I'll triple check.
Like show her the mock-up of the sign.
I can write it
She
down
has
for you.
it.
If that's
Do you
okay.
want her phone? Yeah, she wanted.
Either that or I'll let you know when you, however you want, if you want me to work directly with her just to make sure, or however you want to work it.
It's up to you, because it's up to you, whichever way you want it, because I could do either way. You know, whichever way you're comfortable with. I don't want to put you in a,
I'll reach out to you. I think it would be nice for you to see it, so.
okay, thanks. She's greatly appreciative to all.
Okay, and now the third thing, Alderwoman Edwards, a memorializing resolution to fund clean water.
It was on, I wrote this because there's a few of us that are writing it from legislation right on up to the governor in 6 different states for, clean water to be put into the reservations instead of them buying bottled water. So, we're doing it from local level to county level to state level. And then hopefully the governor will go in with this to, Secretary of State. Highlight. Right now, the water on all the reservations, 70% of the reservations is contaminated. So, New York State is probably the cleanest water from Onondaga Reservation, Mohawk, and the 6 nations. But there's still, there's still other nations, so we as a collaborative joint want to get fresh water. So on a local level, is it gonna do anything here? No, we don't have a reservation in Kingston, New York. But it's going on. Gregory McCullough is writing one for the county. And then from there, we're gonna get a letter going straight up the ladder.
So are we calling on, I would ask a clarifying question, thank you.
That's fine.
So as I understand it, that, our reservations in the whole of the United States aren't covered under the Clean Water Act.
No,
So that's why this is
Yeah.
occurring. So this resolution though says it's calling on our elected officials in Washington
Yeah.
only, so we're not going to the governor, we're just going to.
no, each one is gonna have the same letter that is written, where we're going to the governor. But the governor it's up to her whether she goes and sends it, but we're all sending it to the president and Deborah Holland, who is, tribal for the, state. So,
Okay. I forgot to bring it with me, but I did see that there is a federal resolution calling for the reservations.
yeah.
It's sitting in committee.
So they wanna back up. Like, the more we hound, just like we do the ceasefire, the more they came, the louder they got, and that's what we're doing also.
Michael?
Yeah, I think it would be useful to include a whereas or I guess a resolve to call on our elected officials in Washington to support that bill that's stalled in committee. whatever its bill number is and whatever the name of the act is? And then is this for both? That's my first question. And then my second question would be, is this just for federal reservations or for state reservations?
No, this is for all reservations within the United States.
Okay,
Mhm.
So that's
There's
the
some-
federal, that's.
Well, no, there's some tribes that are federally recognized and some that are not
New York has
federally
like
recognized.
state
Right.
records.
It gets a little complicated with the reservations. Like my cousins all live in Wisconsin, they live they call it Indian land. It's not a reservation, but they're federal tribe, but they're individually owned with that land. So it really does get a little intricate. You have to know federal tribal law. And I do have a lawyer that's doing tribal law with my family members. So, because my second cousin is a legislator out in Wisconsin, and they're doing the same exact thing. So we're gonna try to connect it all, that everything kind of passed and go from there.
Do you want to reference the federal
Mhm.
legislation that's already?
Should I?
I think it would be helpful. I mean, I think it was a senator out of Colorado that sponsored it
Mhm.
and is sitting in committee so that it's just more precise. Yeah.
Also on the agenda, again, we're missing a page. Or the
This.
resolution is not complete, it
Okay,
ends with end.
okay.
Right.
Oh,
How
you know
many
what?
pages
Maybe
was
because
this?
it's like double-sided for the copy I got. Like,
Oh, you have, what does it say on the other side?
to be further resolved, that the city clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to President Joe Biden, Senator Charles Schumer, and Senator Kirsten Gillibrand as the city of Kingston's federally elected officials and the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, for the first Native American to serve as a cabinet secretary. Therefore, it be resolved by the Common Council of the City of Kingston, New York, that this resolution thereupon be adopted.
Does that have our Congress number?
No,
Yeah, it should probably.
Yeah.
Too.
Like,
They're
that,
federal.
and do it, so, yeah, there's, yeah.
so is this time sensitive?
Not at
If
all.
we're bringing this back?
I'm just introducing it, we're just joining a whole bunch of different people. I'm sure everybody has their own little mistakes and but eventually you'll get to where we need to be.
Okay, I think it's just helpful to reference that legislation that's already.
Do you have a number to that, or do you want me to write you a note to do? You want me to write you a note there?
Thank you.
And then we would want to put,
So add
Congressman.
Brian's resolution number.
And I noticed that it's not only clean water, but also sanitation services too, so that's
There's no
important.
infrastructure on most of
I
it.
would think, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. There is one. They have no heat even to let in.
Those are the two comments.
yeah, anybody else? have any?
And I appreciate you all directing them. It's well received.
I'd love to see that council sponsor a resolution to adopt Indigenous Peoples' Day in October.
Yeah, everybody,
Instead of
everybody else,
Columbus Day.
yeah, everybody else has one, but
Yeah.
Indians do not have their official day. It's so weird.
I wish we weren't called Indians.
Why?
Yeah,
I
Indigenous
find
people.
that offensive.
I'm Indian, I'm from an offensive as well.
I have, I can claim the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
too.
Majority of them don't find it offensive, they want to be called it's Native Americans, it's Indians,
There you go.
Indians, there's a whole, whichever word, it's not offensive to me, but it might be offensive to you from the July holidays. But
All right, going on to item number 4 is the modification of rules of order by Alderman Tierney.
Yes, so this was introduced based off of what has happened previously in this committee. I think that's a number of changes that we can make to our rules to sort of increase ownership of our own resolutions and, ensure fairness. And so it's also clearly stated in the rules. The rules were silent on the notion of amendments to, what I would call unfriendly amendments to resolutions. And what's referred to in the rules of order of the county legislature as unfriendly amendments. So I think to clarify that would benefit both us as legislators as well as the public.
Unfortunately, this also has the same problem. There's every other page of the county.
Yes, I saw your email earlier. I only saw your email just before I got here. So it's in all of your emails is the full rules of order. However, that part of my communication is the actual aspect of the rules of order that I think we should adopt. I only sent the entire thing for reference.
Right, but that the irony is.
Yeah.
I did not,
So this is the exact paragraph.
that is the
It's
exact
pulled from
paragraph
the-
that I pulled from that I recommend we adopt. I would actually recommend that we do a full review of our rules of order to,
We do every year.
but I think, that's done, in our first 15 minutes of being over. I don't think we necessarily have time to weigh in on it. And this comes
There may be
from
some
now.
other rules that we. want
Yeah,
to
exactly,
change too.
6 months of
So you're
deliberation. I mean, we have
proposing
until,
this, still.
yes, obviously, come December, when we do it again,
Right.
I think we should add it, but there's nothing in our rules that say you can only modify the rules in January.
Right, no, we do it all
Yeah.
every morning if we see anything.
So, this was
I'm just
something
saying,
that I saw.
I did a major overhaul when Barbara came. We did a really big overhaul of the rules, because you couldn't understand them.
We tried to move towards plain language, but one of the issues is that this body does not operate under Robert's rules, and so you want to move to a full parliamentary system that's not a single rule change. It's got to be a comprehensive change in the way the body operates.
Well, this resolution, or this modification does not reference Robert's rules.
But it's your deliberation, but all I'm saying is the distinctions between friendly and unfriendly amendments are kind of Robert's Rules-ian approach to things that does diverge from the way this body acts, and there is no parliamentarian as the county has. So you guys may very well want to and need to revise your rules. I'm just saying that it doesn't necessarily map one-to-one, that you can graft something that has a very different kind of infrastructure onto what you guys do. Although I agree that there are a number of items that we even found in the last meeting, numbering and ordering that need to be addressed.
So the one issue not that I have, but we have to be aware of is your use of the word sponsors, because right now our resolutions, like, we don't have sponsors in the sense of, like, Bob Dennison sponsored this. It's the committee that passes it out is technically, according to our resolutions, the sponsors, and that is not the way, it's not in the rules, it's just the way that it has been. So if this language will kind of confuse that, so I don't know if we want to be a little bit more, use a different word instead of sponsors, because, like, for example, the one that I have next, I'm bringing it forward, so you could technically say that I'm the sponsor of it, but it's not going to reflect that. It's going to say, sponsored by Laws and Rules Committee members, blah, 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 blah. And that's how all of them do it, so I think we just need to rethink that word.
Can I just add, I noticed that like years ago, before we were here, I used to see agendas and it would say sponsor.
I don't know when that change happened, but it predates my time on the council.
So it's not the way things have always been done.
No, but I mean, I can't say how things
Yeah,
have always
no.
been, but I'm just saying that's the way it operates now, so then that has to be changed. And then the other thing to consider is most of our resolutions are brought forward by non-council members. So with this, I'm assuming this rule would not apply.
Yeah, I guess
those-
I would say for council-driven resolutions or council-introduced resolutions, because it usually just does come from one or two of us.
I would like to see all resolutions have sponsors, even when they come forward from
Yeah, I think they should.
administration, that they have a sponsor.
Can that be changed?
Just
What
a
I would
modification of the rules.
Right, I would say it would go beyond just putting in this paragraph, because we have to define what a sponsor is and all kinds of other legal things, right, that would, or no, because we don't, there's no definition of sponsor in the
In our
current rules.
Well, I would work backwards. What's the goal of identifying a sponsor? So for example, I think my office put forward 3 or 4 local laws last year, right? And so it seems to me inconsistent with a lay understanding of sponsor to have the Office of Corporation Counsel be a sponsor. So what do you guys mean and intend to accomplish by saying sponsor?
Well, it wouldn't be the corporation counsel's office being the sponsor, but identifying someone to carry it and be the sponsor.
Yeah, that's the way it works in the county. I mean, so again, for the county, it's, DPW comes in, the executive introduces a resolution for a DPW to buy a truck. The sponsors of it, just through practice and through the rules, are the chair and deputy chair of the committees.
What value does that bring to work that's done by, say, not my office, but that's usually in conversation with you guys, but a department head, so let's say it's Sue Cahill. If I have something that I'm working on, I would reach out and talk to one of you guys, but I don't know if, for the planning board, I'm assuming you would talk to the liaison. Does that mean that the liaison has to be the sponsor? If so, does that mean that the department head has to sort of sell the concept to the liaison, who's a gatekeeper? And usually a sponsor is a gatekeeper. So are you guys trying to create a new gatekeeper system?
I personally think it adds, like, I can see the value in it sometimes, but I think more often than not, it will just add work for the council members and time, like, how would we even track that? That would be me when everything goes through, or that, I just don't see I see there could be benefit, but I think the busy work of it outweighs the little benefit that I see. I mean, I could be convinced otherwise, but I don't see it right now.
At the county level, is there a gatekeeper function for a sponsor? So for example, in the Sue Cahill example, let's say that the natural sponsor would be the planning board liaison, but let's say the planning board liaison personally disagrees with what the department head wants, would then the department head then go to a different older person who is not that gatekeeper to get a sponsorship, because that's usually like working, I don't know what the county, quite frankly, anything about the county. But when I've done that work up in Albany, you shop for a sponsor. And so until you convince the person that aligns with you, nothing moves forward. So is that the type of process that you guys want to create?
Not entirely, but but I do think having the consent of the person who wrote it is an important piece of the equation. I think that this is, you can come in and turn any resolution into anything else without me or as an introducer or as anybody else ever even being in the room. And I would just have to read about it or watch the live stream if I wasn't present. So this is more about ownership, responsibility of the work that you put in.
Isn't that part of our job to do all this?
I would think so. We're legislators, we're a legislative branch.
Ready?
Yeah, I think, really, since I've been on the council going on 9, almost 10 years, we've almost always acted in a very cooperative way. We disagree about things. We've been able to have discussions about them without reducing these to like specific ownership, which I find to be a very concerning term to use about legislation. I would be in favor of going in the exact opposite direction, more along the lines of what Sarah's talked about, what they've done in Beacon, or at least where you represented it, where instead of having committees, because I think this is part of the problem, instead of having committees where we have partial knowledge as a council, you said you meet twice a month, right? And everybody's involved in developing.
Well, the council, and this is not just true in Beacon, it's Peekskill and Newburgh, the same thing.
Wait, it's Newburgh.
No. Well, they have their own issues, but let's just say that a lot of communities, or at least three that I know of, 3 communities of which Beacon is one, has 2 council meetings a month and 2 workshops. And in the workshops, everybody is engaged. Presentations happen, everybody sees it, everybody has access to the same information. There's discussion, there, maybe disagreement. If everybody comes to an agreement and says, yes, we want to see this passed, then it goes to the next council meeting that's coming up. And it can be passed, or something could stay in a workshop and be workshop for months if it turned out that it needed more information, but at least everybody has their hands on at the same time. And I have to say, things moved along very, very quickly. It was 4 meetings a month total. No committees, everybody was aware of everything that was going on. Nothing was happening, in a committee that somebody wasn't on, and then something they proposed, they heard about.
Michael, and then I have a question.
So I suppose ownership is the wrong word. I think this empowers our branch to be more direct and responsible with these things. Now, I really just meant this 4 items that we introduce ourselves as, me, Carol, Randy, Bob, all of us. And to sort of carry the ownership of that torch, but empowerment, to make sure that you are the one carrying it to the finish line. I think that's, it could create a larger conversation. I do think that that's gatekeeping. I don't think is an accurate word. I think it's an important check on the power of the executive to have a sponsor who approves it before it gets introduced. I think that actually is a valuable tool for legislators.
But what happens if sorry.
I wanted to ask you a question, just going back to the other 3 municipalities that you mentioned. Is that a charter consideration, because those cities are a different charter?
I don't know if it's, it may be a charter, it may be a
Our
charter.
charter does have the committees.
Yeah, I think it's in the charter, so that would be part of the charter
Right.
revision.
So they have the city administrator.
Right.
Yeah, but just Beacon as a city administrator,
Newburgh does.
doesn't.
It does.
Newburgh does.
Newburgh does.
No, it has a manager, doesn't it?
It's the same
They're
thing.
Well, no, it's not the same, it has to do
It's
with
not the same,
who
but it's-
reports to who.
They don't have an elected CEO,
that's
they
right.
have an appointed CEO. That's a manager versus an administrator versus, so.
But anyway, so there's a lot of
it's
discussion, right, there's a lot of discussion, because there are many different formats that these can take, and it's worth investigating as we consider charter revision.
Because she has a manager too.
Because he has a manager.
Brandon?
So, but see, I see, like, so the example that you're talking about, you're concerned with, I think that process would have been much more smooth if we had all sat down at the very beginning and talked that through, as opposed to the way that it unfolded. So that's why I think more cooperation is better than trying to reduce down to particular carrying, whatever word you want to use. I hate saying ownership, but responsibility, individual responsibility, because I think the more that we work together, we have to develop trust, we have to develop ways of really communicating with each other. That's why I think even if we have to live with 4 committees, well, you were just mentioning, the charter says that the 4 committees, which 5 members, I think we might be able to informally work with that. That's just, my sense is more cooperation is better. I don't see this as.
Well, this was introduced because that process did not work. Because it felt like, I felt talked over by that process. I can't speak for other members, but I think there was a lot of distrust in that process. And that's why it's important to articulate these things in our rules of order.
Alderman Edwards.
I agree with Rennie, I just think that the more we work together, the more we can rely on each other for different things, because the one resolution in the end, with all different resolutions, going to get you a little weary and confused a little bit. And I think the more that we all work with each other, I think it would be better to have little things like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's no reason why, like Carol couldn't finish, if I had to write a resolution or something, and she couldn't finish it out. Like we should know.
So that would be the co-sponsorship, and this doesn't necessarily stop us from working together. I think this actually requires us to work together. That is part of the process, because, I could introduce this, I could have left for Maine earlier today But because I introduced this resolution, I felt obligated to come here and defend it and talk to you all, but that might not be the case for other resolutions. You know, we've had people who are listed here who are not here on our agenda. So I think that that's part of the ownership of it, or.
But that
Right.
almost never happens. I mean, the only one was the mayor, but I also think it
Sure,
was Jeannie
but-
who was originally, it was Jeannie's communication.
I agree, and the more you get used to being a manager, like, I'm learning so much more each time I meet with the group than when I'm not, and then you hear half steps, the more we meet, I think is, instead of, like I have double meetings at the end of the month, everything's in 2 days, double meetings, and I'm rushing, I'm getting half of, like, climate smart that I have to be here, and then half of it, the scheduling is, I'm not getting everything that I need, I'm getting bits and pieces, and that's because I'm new at this, I believe.
Is this I guess I'm reluctant to take action based on one occurrence. I'm fearful that this is a reaction to one unpleasant experience as we develop that memorandum. And I hate to make a dramatic change based on one time, based on one experience. And, so I guess I'd like to work together the concept, but I'm reluctant to go ahead and make a change based on one time.
I was just thinking, it sounds like we are saying that there is an issue with process.
Mhm.
And,
Yes.
so that might be a perfect thing for us to think through. Certainly it's for January, because we have to approve the rules again in January. So we could take this as a starting point and really talk about how we would like to interact going forward. And so really develop something that would be more inclusive, that would not have the problems that we've seen with our current committees. The problem being that 5 people generally have a good awareness of an issue, 4 people don't, they're not at the committee meeting, right? And so we could also include in that something more like when we have an idea for legislation, we could send it in as a suggestion and then, allow the committee to develop the legislation.
I think that slows things down, and I think as legislators, we should be putting in legislation individually.
Well, we
Yeah.
can, but I mean, this seems to really kind of narrow the possibility for amendment. And for me, amendment is the process of working together.
So I think overall, we should look at the aspect of sponsorship amendments and whether or not we, how we deal with the administration, if we want to leave it as is, or as far as I see it now, like a 3-point process for amendments to look at on the rules.
Going forward.
Yeah.
So I have a question actually for Michael, because I think, we're a much smaller body than the county
From the
legislature.
assembly.
From the state assembly or the legislature, so, I think the procedures have to be a little bit different because
Sure.
we're just 9 people who can talk to each other. The question I had about the sponsor is, let's say the sponsor, according to this, the sponsor doesn't like something that's going forward and it has to be amended, then does it go back to committee? Would that just slow something down? Because if the sponsor says, I don't like what the committee came up with, then it doesn't go back to committee? Because we don't deliberate, in our council meetings, right? We just vote.
We could deliberate.
We're supposed to deliberate.
Yeah, it's, right, but I think that's the advantage of a sort of a workshop situation where you're there to talk and.
But that's also the committee here.
That's-
We're
yeah,
deliberating.
that's-
Well, we are, that's right, but I mean, so if the sponsor doesn't like something that's going forward, then it just automatically goes back to committee to be discussed.
Correct, I believe.
That's what, that
that's-
was just.
So, yeah, and I think that could necessarily slow things down, but I also think it's important to slow things down sometimes, to be deliberative about these things. I feel like we do so much at the last minute because it's suddenly an emergency, when we've had really months to see this on the radar, but it's just this. We gotta do this now. If we don't do this, we'll miss the deadline. I think that's leading more into an administrative thing, but speaking strictly from the council, I really, as we could see, our memorializing resolution did not suddenly stop war crimes from occurring, so we could have deliberated further, to use an example. Jeannie's memorializing resolution that we just discussed, we had minor changes that Jeannie was okay with. And I would just as easily respect it if she said, I'm not interested in that. But again, there's no necessarily, we're not running to a goalpost right now. These are things that can take time, that can be crafted in a way that, in my opinion, requires the cooperation. Because you don't like my amendments, you could vote no on the floor and we're at an impasse. So that's where it requires a cooperation.
But what happens if the sponsor never is willing to accept any?
Then you vote it down,
Then you vote it down, but it can't be amended.
then
Wasted,
you defeat it.
but we've
But
wasted
we've
months
right.
in all of that. It just seems to me like, if you're looking for, this sponsorship, sort of role, that almost seems to me to be very like ego driven. Like, you want to take ownership, wrong word, but the word you used, you want to take ownership of it, and it's sort of like everything has to flow through you, and is there some weighted vote therefore that you would have as the sponsor?
Well, I think you would have to consent to changes, and I don't necessarily think that's ego, I think that's you put in the work of doing the research, of trying to build support, drafted with other members who may want to sponsor it with you or co-sponsor it with you, to then just have somebody come across and say, I'm making these amendments, I don't care if you're hearing on it. That to me, it could just bulldoze over the work that you as a member did and the research you did.
Okay,
And the conversations you may have had with your constituents or
The president's.
Well, I think mine was gonna go in a different direction because it was gonna be a while ago, but, kind of off of that, and then maybe I'll throw in another idea. But I lost my train of thought. Ready to go. Help.
Well, I don't quite understand the issue here, because somebody proposes a piece of legislation, and 3 of the 5 people will say, well, here's the move we'd like to make. Then they vote on it. Why should the original, I don't understand why the original proposer could then withdraw it. Because that to me is the cooperative process. If you're working on it, if people don't like the resolution at all, they'll vote against it on the floor, right? But generally, people are making amendments to things, except for 2 notable members in our past. Generally, if you're making amendments to things, it's because you're in favor of the legislation and you're trying to work through. And my experience has been overwhelmingly that we've cooperated on these things over the last 9 years. So.
Yeah, and I think 9 times out of 10, we would have the consent. It would be an amendment that is amenable to the person who introduced it, who did the work of drafting this legislation. It's just about that 1 time out of 10. That's why we have rules.
Can I just make a comment about a couple of rule changes and council actions that some of you guys may not have been here to really be a part of? So one on the rules there, it's kind of, you have them in front of you, talks about how they will be considered. And so if you decide to go with sponsorship, you have to define sponsorship. But if you decide not to go with sponsorship, you can rethink the kind of points of order such that anyone who first speaks on an issue necessarily or is required to have additional time to speak on that issue before a vote, or you can tinker with it however you want, but that might be one place to add clarity and provide additional opportunities for the person who had put in, or group, subgroup, that put in additional work to have another say before there is a vote on something. So kind of the order of comments and the order of responding, or the amount of time you can speak on something, both, that's not necessarily clarified in your committee rules, but it is potentially something that you might change for the actual conduct of council meetings if the body starts moving towards more deliberative council meetings as opposed to kind of just voting without significant deliberation. That's something you might change. Like right now, you can only speak twice
2 times on one issue, 15 minutes total.
So for example, that could be a place, if you have more public deliberation on an issue, where if someone had first introduced a concept, maybe they get another time. But if you decide not to go with a sponsorship place, I'm just throwing out ideas about down the road rule considerations. The other thing is, many of you were not on the council when the council developed a point system for reviewing requests for payments in lieu of housing creation. There was a tremendous amount of thought put into that matrix that I don't believe the council's ever followed up on. But one of the points that we discussed with a lot of backstory research was the potential impact of having a kind of member veto, right? Or a ward representative veto. And so there was a compromise struck in the way that Bartek first presented the point allocations. And then I think there was some further refinement in what the council actually adopted, which sort of recognized that one member of the council might have a little bit more insight into, say, community outreach, but without putting the thumb too heavily on the scale of that one individual's view on the issue. And so I would encourage you maybe to go back and think about not necessarily the specific kind of document, but sort of the thought process around this balance between an individual interest without kind of distorting the collaborative work of the body. Because some of that discussion already happened.
Okay, well, we clearly have a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So now,
And
thank you. Yeah, I guess just based on this conversation, I agree with Bob that because this is reactionary, I think that we should have further conversations on this to figure out I mean, right now, we know we can't use the word sponsor, it doesn't fit into what we do, so we either have to overhaul our system, or we would have to change that word. And also I agree with Rennie that this just feels like it's making our body less collaborative, which makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because that's not that we always agree. But I think especially since we just came from a really heated issue and that's happened so infrequently that, being reactionary to that and then pushing us towards less collaboration, I think it's going to do damage to the body. So I'd rather discuss this further and figure out like a compromise to that. And then the other point, and kind of goes off of a few things that others were mentioning, and Rennie and Michelle may or may not remember this, but when I so in January 2020, I started a system that collapsed because the world collapsed a couple months later. But one of the ideas before I took this position or was elected into this position, I reached out and spoke with all the council members who were serving at the time to kind of see what we could do a little bit better, because I know our processes and systems are not great. I mean, part of the reason is, we don't have our own staff. We're all part-time. There's a lot of reasons why things don't work as smoothly as they could and should. So one of the ideas that whoever came up with and I sort of put into play was to have liaisons for any of the bigger issues that were coming to the council as a whole. So for example, the Pike Plan, to have somebody appointed as council liaison to that issue. So instead of an issue to the committees, it'd be an issue or liaison to the issue, so that they could make sure that they ask the questions, that they do the research, and then they bring it forward to the committee, make sure all the other council members are kind of in the know of that. It never, because like I said, we shut down a couple months later, so it never really, we never remember talking about
yeah,
this.
you called it like almost like an expert in that area or something like that.
Probably not.
Yeah, an expert, but like some, yeah, it was like some.
Yeah, just to kind of dig,
Policy, yeah.
because one of the issues with our systems, it is really hard, Queen, thank you very much. it is really hard to know, to keep track of everything that is going on. It's incredibly hard. So that was kind of a solution that I came up with that we never really tested. So that's another, doesn't answer your specific concerns on this, but, just, with Sarah, bring up Sarah's point and, maybe something that could address some of the concerns in a way.
I'd like to speak. So I disagree. I think that if someone is, so we have people that introduce things, we send in a communication. I don't believe that using the word or changing, going back to sponsor would take away from the collaborative effort. Jeannie brought forward, the clean water. That is something that she should have recognition for them being the sponsor and getting that through the council, even though we are all collaborating and working together at the table, that is what it is. I would like to go back and just see where the change is and speak to some people historically on the council, or, just to see how that happened, or did it just go away on its own? Yes, we are a body, but we are all individuals bringing our own different ideas and views forward. And I don't think that everything can be always homogenous in bringing it forward, but we collaborate again at the table. And I think that's how it should work. It's just my opinion. So. Michael?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think champion is a better word than
Yeah.
ownership. You are championing this issue. And so I think that idea of the I'm the pipe plan czar leans too far into that
Yeah.
mode, because there could come as we have seen, I feel one way about an issue and somebody else feels a different way. It can't all go through me
Right.
to say,
Right.
oh, sorry, anything about
Well,
manhole covers has to go through Bob because
Yeah,
we're creating this.
it would never stifle anybody from doing that. It's just somebody could rely, I don't
Yes,
have
yeah.
enough time.
So, but
I mean, we probably shouldn't have been joking too much about experts and queens and stars, because it would never, ever stifle anybody from asking questions.
So I think that the sponsorship, just coming from the worlds that I come with, it does encourage collaboration. You have to speak with your other legislators. I think it actually requires a more personal level of collaboration than we have. Reaching out, well, we don't have another aisle, but across the aisle, I think sponsorship benefits that. There's a lot of also scholarship that points to the collaboration that it generates. And it just seems like to champion the issue, that's you were the one who decided, we can all agree that reservations need clean water and, with our heads in the clouds. Jeannie is the one who said, no, we gotta do something about it. And I think that deserves, as Michelle said, recognition. And we could come in and make 42 changes and say, well, everybody needs clean water. And we make a resolution about how everybody needs clean water.
That would be totally wonderful.
Yeah.
No, I'd like to see Flint.
So I think it creates a standard, and that's why we create rules for guardrails.
I'd like to propose a little subcommittee like we've done for other issues. I'm happy to work on it. And Michael, you're not on laws and rules, so if we put a couple of people together that want, ideas around,
The amendment.
rules changes or ideas, just not to create the change, but research the change.
Yeah.
And
Well, you should
somebody
research, so
Yeah.
that would be good for us to see.
Is that creating a standing committee separate?
No.
from these rules?
Just a little ad hoc we've done for the apprenticeship things or.
Study group.
Rules change working group.
That's a good terminology.
The current rules, I think, allow for use of chair to create a committee within laws and rules to look at that. If you're talking about creating a cross-council kind of task force, do you think that's an Andrea
The
issue?
president. Maybe we should ask the chair of laws and rules to ask the president to.
Well, I thought you said laws and rules.
Well, it wasn't necessarily because Michael's not on laws and rules. I thought we couldn't have a quorum, so that's. That's in the past, that's what we said.
It just needs more discussion. The question is, what's the ideal
The venue.
format for that?
I guess
Should it just be in Los Angeles or across the whole council? Because there might be other people who aren't here who, I guess, you know, that's true, right?
So it depends on who's doing it. So
Right.
if the chair is doing it, the chair can make it a subcommittee of the
Okay.
committee you chair.
All right.
If you want to be across, it's an Andrea issue.
Okay.
Okay. But it doesn't have to be decided tonight, we can come back to it.
I was gonna say, there's a couple of hard subjects that I think would, you know, I know with the food trucks, that's turned into a life of its own, and hands, legs and everything. So I need to have on some difficult things that we work on together, to have a subcommittee that sounds to work together without breaking any rules.
I'm sorry,
Like,
I don't
just
know what
say-
you mean about the
Like,
food trucks.
I'm just saying, like Michael says, you want to take ownership, but and when we have big things that are controversial, then to have a subcommittee maybe for that, I don't know if you want to do it all the time or on different things.
Not necessarily a piece of legislation, I'm just,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
just,
All right, that's what I was.
yeah, policy or procedure.
And it may make sense to have people who are not on the
Mhm.
committee be involved, because just like Michael has an issue he's bringing to this committee, you know.
I'm just wondering, I'm sorry.
Go
ahead.
I'm just wondering, you know, we've been bouncing back and forth the whole notion of meeting maybe once a week, as per Newburgh or, Beacon. Would that calm some of this? Would it, you know, would it take away the need for these little subgroups if we in fact were able to meet on a, you know, so that there's no 4 committees or 5 committees, whatever they are, but that we all convene and hear the particular issue that's coming out.
I think that, again, that's a charter change, like, that's not,
And also probably not. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about these little mini committees doing research work. That's not something that's we're gonna, you know, like that's somebody's, I don't know.
It doesn't seem to be a charter issue. It means like at any point in time, people can get together and do
Mhm.
research, right? Or does that have to be set up legally? Or defined?
The charter calls for the committees, right? But we could, without changing the charter, we could also have 2 committees meet at the same time in the same place. But they could, and then they could talk about all the issues that are involved that they want to talk about, but only the 5 members of a particular committee could then actually vote on something.
and also we can, just like we did last month, we ended up not being able to finish something at the table in one meeting. There's no reason why we can't have
Yes.
more than one laws and rules meeting if there's something that we are working.
Oh, that was special meetings.
Yeah,
So maybe-
so it still has the same outcome,
Or a special meeting of a specific topic.
right?
Right.
Okay. All right, so I will outreach to other members of the council that weren't here and see if anyone has thoughts or interested in
Great.
being on the subcommittee, and then I'll bring this back to the agenda. Awesome.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, next modification of rules for Zoom public speaking, President Shaw.
So you all know why this is being brought forward. You know, there were reports saying that we were Zoom bombed. It was not a Zoom bomb. They entered the meeting. I know you all know this, but just to recap, especially for the video. They entered the meeting the same way any of our speakers do. We contacted Zoom, and there was really nothing that we could have done on their end to have prevented this, so we already are in the more secure webinar, Zoom webinar versus just Zoom. So people have to let you in, you have to let them speak. So I came up with 4 solutions. I am completely open to any other solutions. So I'll just go through them. The first one is all Zoom speakers must be on camera. This will eliminate anonymity and make it harder for folks to hide their statements behind a screen or faces. This also does not significantly hinder why we opted to continue virtual comment post-COVID to allow for greater accessibility. So people can still stay home if they have childcare issues or mobility issues, and still participate in local government, in the comfort of their own home, but they will have to kind of show, they would have to show their face. I think people would have a harder time saying nasty things if they're showing their face, but I am also a little naive sometimes. The second suggestion is, our rules do state, so we do have, no matter what, I think we have to change our rules, because it does state that the speakers have to sign up by noon on the day of our meeting. So we either have to start, we could stick to that, which adds another hoop for people to do, but it's on our agenda and it would have to be clearly noted so people know to do it. Because we want public to know, the nice public to know that that they have to follow that, but then I would adhere to it, which would, cause some strife in the beginning, but that's one thing we could do, which is add a small tiny layer. The third suggestion is we could opt to end public comment for Zoom. It still allows for people with accessibility issues to reach out to us because we still take written comments, and as you all know, because you read them, we do read them. So we take them just as seriously as we do the in-person comments, so we could do that. And the fourth one is do nothing and hope for the best.
Right.
Wasn't the problem with telephone calls? Wasn't that how the people,
Yeah, but most people call in, or I shouldn't say most people, but a public member, they call in the number. It's the same way that the public could enter.
but I'm just saying,
So
so,
they would have to do it on a screen, they had to do
They couldn't
it,
call.
but they could still do it on their phone.
so in essence, what we're saying is we would ban telephone calls.
Well, I wouldn't
Unless it was
necessarily
a Zoom
say
call.
that, because you could do it on your smartphone.
Like if they're calling you on analog?
No, I'm just saying, a Zoom,
They have phone numbers, yeah. Call it.
Zoom
Yeah.
has call-in phone numbers listed on the link, below the link.
How were those people coming in? Were they coming in? They were coming in as
The link on the
Zoom,
website.
not
Zoom
phones,
just
like
nice.
turned with their cameras turned off.
I think that was different.
There was
You
variations.
could come in online by clicking the link, you could also come in with your phone, but couldn't you put it on screen for that, or that would be
It's
different?
separate. Well, you get promoted to panelist, right?
Right,
No matter how you come in, you get promoted to panelist to speak.
Right.
Whether it's telephone or, no video or with video.
yeah, I don't actually control it, I haven't come into anything, but yeah, so the webinar is more secure, and when I say next speaker and Lisa says the name, she then, puts them in as a panelist, and then takes them out at the end of the call.
I like number 3, and if people want to make comments on their own, and we get written comments are happily accepted.
Sarah?
I also agree with number 3. And I don't know, I mean, I know that when COVID was over, a lot of communities stopped doing Zoom. It went back to requiring either written comments or somebody being in person. I don't think that the county of Ulster doesn't have Zoom, does it? Michael?
County legislature is, and it's only for Zoom if no other legislators, and so advertises their interest.
Okay. Yeah, so I would go for number 3.
I'm in favor of combining 1 and 2, like people sign up by noon and then we still continue it. I think that if we have the ability, because of rule changes for COVID, that we can still exercise the use of Zoom if we are out sick, I think that the community should also still be able to comment.
Just before we go on to this list, just a reminder, or to everybody to put again, because this is an amendment to the rules, it does need 6 votes to enact.
Take 6 votes.
So that would be beyond the committee,
Council.
council-wide, that's what I mean, yeah.
It's 6 votes at the council.
At the council, right,
Yeah.
but a majority here.
Right.
Got it.
That raises another issue. So I agree with Michelle. I think that we have the technology to expand participation. And so I think that we should use it.
So you're saying 1 and 2, or just 1?
Get one into it.
I think that was like a really special situation, and this is something that was happening nationally, and I don't foresee this being an ongoing issue, so sorry.
I don't know if it's true or not, but can we say that we capture IP addresses? So it's almost like a forewarning, like if you.
But that, it
doesn't-
doesn't matter
yeah.
because we haven't been able to catch anybody, so they'll be, most likely they'll be savvy enough, like they.
You can change your
They can hide
IP,
it.
you can change it.
We also did.
But when you catch the IP address,
You
you
can
can
change
then go back to that person or that address and see who
There's a
generated.
process where you can, like,
I'm not saying that we do it, but I'm saying it's almost like a disclaimer. Like, to just be aware that we.
well, we could also
people
claim
do
we have
this.
flies that are technologically developed to spy on them.
I'm just looking for this.
Yeah, everyone goes through the thing that works there. Most people use different apps, even
Different, like
just.
VPN.
Yeah,
sites.
VPN, yeah.
VPN
Thank
to
you.
disguise your,
Oh,
yes,
yeah, I don't
your
have that.
IP, yeah.
Spoofing is
I'm sorry?
spoofing,
Oh.
so that it filters through a lot of different
Oh.
addresses, and so you can't trace
Oh
it
my
back.
God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you might wanna do that for shopping, or so your, like, information is visible, it's not always for nefarious reasons, so.
Do it for cookies, for wood cookies.
Mm.
I like brownies, but.
But anyway, I do like options 1 and 2.
Combination 1 and 2.
I am leaning towards option 3. I think that, this has shown that, the fascists have come to town and they came through it in a very easy way. And I don't think, if it's option 1, are we going to stop somebody from wearing a mask and saying the same crazy shit that they said?
Please, what? No language, my table.
I apologize, crazy stuff. Are they, there's no way to stop it. I think actually forcing them, if they feel so strongly in their outrageous beliefs, to actually drag themselves here to the council chambers and say that in a public square is very different. And I think that anonymity of, there's also nothing to stop anybody from saying a fake name on the computer or registering a fake email address that they created for just this purpose, to be a fascist troll. I think actually requiring them to come in person would actually eliminate that, because you have to face your community, which I would hope that most people come here, live, to give public comment, live here in the community, the wider community, and not from wherever these people zoomed from, should have been.
They were not from this. One was from New York State, the rest were not.
So they could have been from Russia or from anywhere in the world.
They
So
were
just-
from the United States, but when we were actually Zoom bombed, that was from out of the country.
So I think that just further proves that this, if you actually have these insane beliefs and you stand by them and you're not just here to sow chaos through the public process, that you need to come here and face your community and your elected officials and say those things.
I'm of the opinion that their agenda was to just shut down public comment. And so if we were to, get rid of Zoom comments, they've achieved their goal. So that's my opinion, so.
We're not, getting rid of Zoom comments doesn't shut down public comment, it just
In that venue, yeah.
makes it written, or you gotta be here.
20th century.
I don't know, I just, COVID is still going on, the president just, it was announced today he has COVID, it's still something, there's still a lot of.
And he has COVID.
Biden has
wow.
COVID, President Biden. Yeah, there's still, I mean, people have compromised health, I know they can still send in a public comment, but,
Can we pass a resolution?
No.
So, well, actually, Jeannie's the only one who did, I did have one other thing. I just wanted to, wait.
So, go ahead.
Well, no, Jeannie hasn't had a chance to weigh in
I
yet.
just think that, we're here to hear the public. And, I think think they should, their face and their phone should be available. Was that 1 and 2? That,
One would be you're allowed Zoom, but you have to show your face.
yeah.
And then 2 is you have to sign up by noon of the day of the meeting. So it all,
One and two,
when I
yeah,
say,
Yes.
raise your Zoom hands or I'll then open it up, I will not do that any longer.
Right.
So,
Can I just ask one
Yes.
implementation question about that? So your program data is really easy to just not do that thing. The hard part though is matching up whoever purports to be the individual who signed up by noon with the individual who shows up. Do you guys have the capacity to do that or ensure that?
We should ask about, so that was partially why the legislature no longer does that, because that was somebody's entire job, was to do the call-in studio, check, pre-screen. That's a lot of work to ask our staff to do. It's a lot of work for you to do for some,
What happens if
Just
somebody
saying.
wants to weigh in, like they're,
But what if somebody wants to weigh in, but they work at a restaurant and they can't send a message to the council president by noon? I think that's actually kind of a classist distinction to just set this time that you need to send your comments in, because we've got a lot of people who came to the meetings right from work, but they were working, so they wouldn't have been able to.
Don't read them.
They got the day before, and they have the day after.
that's for, and
They
just,
could also.
I was gonna say this, and have my notes, but also something that you said, to be transparent, an idea that people brought to me. I didn't add it to here, I will tell you what it is, I will definitely not advocate for it, I'll explain why. A couple public members asked that I vet everyone, so I listen to the comments and then say if it's okay to, exactly, okay, I just,
I think.
I was like,
Talk about gatekeeping.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
And I think that that could put a lot of psychological damage on you or for whoever council president in the future, because I think that advertises that you can terrorize Andrea.
Yeah,
She has to say yes or no to your comment, and I think that also puts you.
right, it's
You can tell
extra.
her one thing and say something.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. That's it.
What was that?
You would record it.
So they would, the suggestion was they would
Yeah.
record it, I would listen to it and deem it okay, and I was like, I just felt really uncomfortable making that a rule, even though
No.
And then I did also, when then it was suggested that the clerk do it, and I shot that down, but out of transparency, I wanted to, fairness to people who suggested it, I wanted to bring it up. You all had the same reaction that I did, to that, so that's why I didn't make it onto the list. So Jeannie, was that 1 and 2, or, okay, so we have not enough.
So are we gonna go coming out of here?
Well, because this isn't as, unless you want more deliberations and see if you guys can sway each other to get this, so it's not 4-3. I think what I would suggest is that we do another month with no Zoom. And then talk to Steve and Drew what they think, and then bring this back to laws and rules for next month. Is everybody comfortable with that? Sure. So we won't do Zoom for August. And then this will stay on the agenda and I will reach out to Steve and Drew.
did you get any complaints?
I was
that
gonna
there
ask the
wasn't a
same
Zoom?
question.
Not a single one, I was
So it's
shocked.
not just been
I
a
haven't.
separate.
Everybody was like, I completely understand that it's a good call, and that, which is like, I mean, that never happens. Watch now. People will, but no, everybody who knew what happened, said it was a good call. So I think us taking further deliberations and, maybe reaching out to your constituents and seeing how they feel about, some of this. If it would really be a hindrance if we didn't have it, that's up to you, how you guys wanna operate, but I'll reach out to Steve and Drew, get their
Okay.
opinion, and
That sounds
then we could discuss this next month.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Old business, so the food trucks, I haven't seen anything come in. So is there any movement?
There's, I talked with Matt, what we're gonna do is set up a meeting. I did go with Michael, and taking the suggestion one at a time. Take people out one at a time, show them what I'm seeing, and then they can come to their own conclusion. So, like Bob has been, Mike has been, Terrell's been very busy. Maybe next week I could reach out to you. I reached out one time, that was it.
Didn't I go to that meeting with you?
Yeah.
And then, so now you want people to go with you to the actual.
Just to, yeah, we don't stop.
I
We
drive by it every day.
Oh, okay, so you know, okay, right?
I'll go as long as we can stop and eat.
Do I have to pay?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll go too.
No, I'm not joking. No, yeah. So we're gonna continue with it if it's okay. At the food truck festival, everybody was there except for Keith, but he went and bought food over there. So and actually Drew and him had a very good conversation. So, I think we should just keep moving forward and wait till we have solid answers. Is that doable? Okay.
Ready?
All right, so we had a meeting with some folks from Beacon. Sarah organized it, and we talked to them about their process of going through charter review. And it was kind of fascinating because they actually went through both processes. They went through the council one first, right?
Right.
And then they went through the citizen petition one. So it's just clear that you can do both. And it also, I think, gave me confidence to know that we can do it, we can do a good job. So some of the things we need to clarify then are whether committee members will be appointed or elected. I was thinking that we would do appointments because elections would cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, a lot of effort. If we do appointments, then we have to think about what kind of representation we would want. And I was thinking one version would be 18 members, so 2 from each ward. And then we would want to think about different forms of representation. So look at perhaps having political representation according to the current distribution as of the last local election. So like how many Democrats voted, Republicans, Ps, et cetera. We might want to look at trying to achieve an even split in terms of gender, 50-50. We want to think about how we would do racial or ethnic representation, whether it should be in line with the city's current population, higher, whatever, we might want to think too about representatives of business or NGOs of various types. Some of this, of course, could be taken care of through the committee meeting with different stakeholders in the community. But I think we want to try, that was one of the things
That's one of the things they
impressed
said.
upon us, was having as wide representation.
Broadest possible representation as you can get from your community, because you want buy-in from all aspects, because in the end, there has to be a referendum. So you want to make sure that a lot of people are involved.
Yeah.
It's an education process, really.
An 18-member committee seems unwieldy.
Never mind.
Well, the reason, so there's a couple of reasons for that.
Makes it easy.
One is to assure representationality.
Sure, yeah.
The other is that then, if you have lower than that, then it becomes hard to have equal ward representation. I was even thinking of 24, where you would have 2 from each ward and 6 at large. Now, I hear what you're saying, it seems unwieldy, but the reason for both of those numbers, they're multiples of 6. And I've talked to a lot of people who are in the citizen assembly movement, and they say multiples of 6 is a magic number, because then whenever you're having discussions, you divide into groups of 6. And 6 is kind of like, that's the number where you get kind of maximum input without people checking out, right? So there's a reason for that number. But I mean, this is all, I hear what you're saying, and I'm just throwing out possibilities to think of. So another thing would be the lifespan we want to talk about. I was thinking 1-year lifespan with an option to continue up to 1 more year. but as decided, so the review commission would say we need more time, and then the council would approve or not approve. And then there's certain things that we have to create a law. It has to be, a law, not an ordinance. And so we would want to clarify certain essentials such as members cannot be compensated. And this is, I think, state law. I don't know if we would need to include it, but we want to make sure everybody understands it. But they can be reimbursed for pertinent expenses. So things like if they feel they need to hire a consultant, if they need secretarial assistance, postage, stationery, things like that.
You mean the body?
The body, yeah. If they decide and the council approves that they need to travel to go talk to another town, really understand what they did in their process. I don't think they did that.
Well, they didn't because that was pre-Zoom. I mean, now with Zoom, they had to travel, I don't think they traveled, they were on the phone and the
I would be
conference
interested to
calls.
see how Miami did their charter.
Right, I mean, there could be traveling to a conference where they're talking about, New York, Albany is having some sort of conference on charter review, in which case they might be traveling.
I'm sorry.
Do you envision this, having staff, with staff?
So that's one of the things to consider,
Yeah.
and that's where we would want to consult with Nikon, which I'll try to do in the next month to see what they've done, because in Beacon, they had minimal staff.
But they had a budget because they used the budget to hire an attorney who was then giving, well, at the end of the process, they hired an attorney who came in and actually drafted the actual and reviewed the actual charter revision.
Right, so that's one thing I haven't talked with Barbie yet about, is whether or not your office would have some time to help craft the law.
Sorry. Sorry for laughing.
Or whether we should hire a lawyer who specializes in it, or Nikon.
It was a part-time, yeah, they just said somebody who was.
We should talk about that separately.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that's something to consider. But then we would also want to try to think in advance and make sure the consultants. So for
Yeah.
example, I would, and again, talking with folks who were involved in the citizen assembly process, one of the crucial things they talk about is having somebody, a consultant, at least at the very beginning, who would help all the members talk first about their values. So that instead of just like jumping in what needs to be changed and fixed, it's a way of creating a kind of community group connection. Not that they're going to agree on everything, but it really helps facilitate the process down the road if people understand where each other's values are set. So that'd be one thing to consider.
I have a question.
Sure.
So these ideas that you're bringing forth based on your meeting with Beacon, with Sarah, thank you for facilitating that. It just feels like then is this something we're gonna vote on, or it's like decisions that you're then?
We have to vote on, we have to decide in the law how many members there will be, whether it's going to be an appointment process or an election process. If it's an appointment process, we would want to clarify in that law, for example, we say the council chooses all of them, or the mayor chooses half or 1/3, or 1.5 persons, I don't know, whatever. So we have to clarify those kinds of things in the law that we come up with.
I have a question. By election process, do you mean that would be an application process like all the other committees that we have, or no?
That's the kind of thing we would need to really ascertain. If we did election, we would actually have to have people like run for the positions.
But couldn't you just have
This is getting really.
have an application process?
No, I know, it isn't.
I'm telling you, that's what's in the literature.
Yeah.
And
But
it's
it-
a two way.
My personal opinion wasn't, that was only my personal opinion, not that it can't be done.
Okay,
But
So,
yeah, I would be
it
for,
sounds like we're going with appointments.
For this election.
well, yeah.
I think there's
okay,
enough
yeah.
referendums on the ballot this year. I
This is
don't
like
think.
about-
we're really-
No, this is like down the road.
This is not time sensitive.
It's not time sensitive, but
But you know, start.
yeah, it's been a long
We've been
time.
talking about-
Yeah, and we've been talking about it for a long time. So what I would be willing to, well, first I think Barbara's right. I should talk with her. Anybody else, of course, who wants to be involved, that's fine too, just let me know. And we'll come up with what's the best process for crafting the law, then we can put out something that says, here are the various places for options. What do folks think? And we'll work toward what we want the final one.
The Nikon conversation that you want to have, is that something that we can all have together?
Yeah,
Okay, like
Sure.
if they could come to caucus or something
Yeah.
like that, I think that
We
Should
did
be-
do that, to remember,
Yeah, we did
Ron,
that.
I think it was
2020
Wade,
though.
I think it was Wade who came.
Yeah,
So,
I think
don't-
that
could-
should-
If you want, I could try, see if it was recorded and, or see who I reached out to, or you,
but the other, most of that material's in our Nikon book. And I think I also sent you both, all of you, the two things that have been produced that are about this process in New York State.
You did, yeah.
So I think the more that the issue would be who we get to help us clarify the specifics that we want. Because I think the general idea in the process, that's pretty clear from the materials. So whoever,
Do you envision this, speaking of time, do you envision this allocating funds for either consultants or an attorney or staff in this budget, in this coming budget, or is this further down the road?
well, I think probably the first thing would be for whoever wants to, whoever wants to join, sit down with Barbara and talk about that process of crafting the law. Because the other thing is, since it's a law, it has to have a first reading, a second reading, there has to be a public forum, a public hearing. So, I mean, that's 2, 3, 4 months, just that. And that would be if we were like, really clicking on all cylinders, which I don't think will happen. So I think we're not looking at this in this particular, in the 2024 budget.
Okay.
I also don't envision a huge amount of money for it either. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
Right, at least in the first, probably in the first year, it seemed like that was more research year. At least that's sort of how it went
Yeah.
in Beacon, so they weren't hiring a lawyer in that year, so it could be that we could go through 2025 without an expense, but then it became clear that there was some,
And the
Expertise in
Nikon literature lays out pretty clearly what the steps are for reviewing the charter, thinking through who you might want, who the committee would want to talk to.
great.
It lays out a lot of the process right there.
So hearing from someone from Nikon would be great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So should we bring you further questions? Because it doesn't, we don't want to waste any Nikon person's time. I think we should probably
Well, I think
develop
first,
a
if
list of
anybody,
things like that.
I wouldn't fill up Barbara's office, but if anybody wants to sit in with that meeting, let me know and we'll find a time to come and meet.
but, I mean, I do think it is important to have the Nikon give a brief explanation of, the beginning, like, what this means and what we're getting ourselves into, not necessarily for us, but for the
Public.
public.
Yes,
Because the last time we did do it was 4 years ago, and, I think just to get everybody thinking about if they want to serve on this, and they're eventually gonna have to vote on it. So I don't wanna skip a step.
I want to clarify, the only reason that there would be a vote is if the committee said we need to make changes, or it was.
The eventual vote of the charter,
Of the law,
not of the law,
setting the committee,
not of settling the committee, I'm talking,
right, but I'm saying if they review and say everything's perfectly fine.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
gonna
well,
vote,
okay,
right?
yeah, I just, okay. That could happen, you're right.
I guess that could happen, but
I imagine 1 or 2 words will change, so.
I'd like to be on that meeting.
and I'd be happy to be.
Okay.
So we'd be happy to see the notes.
All right,
Um,
we'll take
Are
the.
you comfortable getting in touch with the Nikon person? You just need to have a name.
We vote I can participate after the 31st of June.
I understand, I'm on that schedule too.
Which island are you going to?
No, I wish.
Yeah, right.
My vacation.
Can you let me know when that meeting happens?
She's
I
like,
don't wanna reach out and then, you know, wait on it, so. So I'll wait for your thumbs up. For that context.
So this is not Walton Rules related, but I just want to, because of the crazy weather and power outages we've had the last 2 days, I just want to say a public thank you to DPW, our police and fire departments who just kept everyone safe and everyone running back on track. So,
I would agree with that, yeah.
and take a motion to adjourn.
Motion, second.
Second, all in favor? We're adjourned at 8:07. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you. Where do I go from here with that? So again, where would I go from here with that? What would we do? For what? The Revolution Park.
What?
For the park, wait on me.
Thank you, Kwame. Have a good night.
I already emailed, something about that, so.